Zoe was gasping for air, her tiny fingers clawing at the severed oxygen tube as the morning mist curled around the patio. I dropped my coffee and sprinted, heart thundering, to the emergency tank while the surveillance feed on my phone loaded. And there she was, clear as daylight, Marlene Redfield trench coat on, garden shears in hand, smirking into the camera right after slicing my daughter's lifeline. Picture this. It's our third morning in Rosebriar Heights. I'm standing in the kitchen sipping weak coffee and watching the sun light up the rows of hibiscus flowers lining the white picket fences across the street. The air smells like garden mulch and something artificial, maybe the HOA mandated lawn treatments. And just beyond the back patio, my daughter Zoe, all of 11 years old, sits with her sketch pad under the pergola we built 2 weeks before moving in. Her oxygen line trails behind her like a lifeline, the long, clear tubing snaking quietly out of our living room wall unit and across the porch floor past her chair into her lap. She's sketching something, probably another tiger, with hibiscus petals for fur. She's got a thing for mixing animals and flowers. I turn back to my toast and that's when I hear it. That knock. Not a neighborly knock. A flat, official-sounding one. 3 sharp taps, precise timed. The kind of knock that says, I'm not here to be friendly. I open the door, and there she is, Marlene Redfield, 56 years old widow president of the Rosebriar Heights HOA, and dressed like she's about to inspect troops rather than greet a new neighbor. Clipboard in hand, a floral brooch pinned to her collar, and a tight smile that doesn't quite reach her eyes. Good morning, Mr. Ellis, she says, glancing over my shoulder like she's already scanning for violations. I thought it would be a good idea to personally welcome you and your daughter to the community. I thank her, keep it polite, try to read her posture. She's tall, angular, her gray blonde hair pulled tight into a bun that looks like it could repel water. We're settling in just fine, I tell her. Her eyes flick past me again, this time toward the side of the house. Yes, I noticed, though I did want to flag a couple of minor issues. Of course. Your truck, she continues, was parked roughly 11 inches past the driveway's edge last night, and the recycling bin. It's visible from the road on non-pickup days. I blink. You measured the truck's position? We strive for uniformity, she says. It's part of what makes Rosebriar Heights so desirable. She taps her clipboard. Also, she trails off, steps around me like she owns the front yard, and motions toward the back patio. What exactly is that running across your yard? I follow her gaze and it hits me. She's talking about Zoe's oxygen line. I step outside and stand beside her. Zoe doesn't look up from her sketching. She's in her element, surrounded by blooming hibiscus and colored pencils. Her oxygen line glints in the sunlight, looped gently along the edge of the patio. That, I say, is my daughter's medical lifeline. She has a rare lung condition. That tubing lets her breathe. Marlene doesn't flinch. It's unfortunate, but it's quite visible, don't you think? Especially with the HOA's floral aesthetic guidelines. I turn to her. She's a child. She's disabled. And she's sitting quietly minding her business. Marlene offers a brittle smile. I understand. But part of the community's charm is its consistency. Visual harmony, we call it. Perhaps she'd be more comfortable indoors where she won't risk drawing attention. I stare at her. She's not a weed, Ms. Redfield. She doesn't need to be hidden. Her smile doesn't budge. I'm only trying to preserve what makes Rosebriar special. That was the first shot. From there, it snowballed. By the end of the week, I had my first formal notice from the HOA. Visible medical equipment is in potential violation of Article 14, exterior consistency and thematic cohesion, whatever that means. I submitted Zoe's medical documentation, attached a letter from her specialist, asked for compassion. What I got instead was a fine, then another, then a flurry of complaints about my lawn's edge not aligning with the neighbors. Neighbors who once smiled as we moved in now looked the other way. One morning, Zoe asked me, Dad, why does no one wave anymore? I didn't know how to answer that. The rumors started that I was using Zoe's condition for sympathy, that I was the kind of person who didn't respect community standards. And through it all, Marlene Redfield never stopped smiling, that tight little smile, the one that said she knew the rules and knew how to twist them until they bent like wire in her hands. She had the HOA board wrapped around her fingers, 3 retirees and a stay-at-home influencer who never said a word without checking Marlene's expression first. Zoe, bless her, kept trying. She kept drawing, kept setting up her spot under the hibiscus trellis every afternoon. But I saw the way she paused when footsteps passed too close. How she flinched when someone muttered under their breath. Looks like a hospital yard. She came inside one afternoon, sketchpad clutched, tight eyes glistening. Ms. Redfield says my tube ruins the hibiscus theme, she whispered. Is that true? Am I ruining things? That's when something shifted inside me. The father in me, sure he was hurt. But the sailor, the logistics officer who spent 20 years coordinating supply drops into hostile territory. He kicked in. I installed a new surveillance system, military-grade, discrete 360-degree coverage. I started logging every email, every fine, every Facebook post in the community group that hinted we didn't belong. That night I called Vince. Vince Reyes, my old Navy buddy. The kind of guy who once got a drone to deliver a six-pack across base just to win a bet. Now he trains private contractors and teaches things the government won't talk about. Vince, I said, I've got a problem. It's civilian. But it's getting dirty. He listened, didn't interrupt. At the end, he just said, if you need air support, I know a few pilots. I laughed, then realized he wasn't joking, because in this new battlefield where power didn't come from rank, but from HOA handbooks and passive-aggressive lawn signs, Marlene was a general. But I wasn't unarmed. I was trained, I was calm, and I was documenting everything. Zoe's oxygen line may have disrupted Marlene's precious hibiscus view, but what she didn't see coming was that beneath those flowers, I'd already started planting seeds of my own. And this quiet war she started, it wasn't going to stay quiet much longer. It started with a scream, not a yell, not a shout. A scream raw, high, and full of panic, the kind that slices through morning silence like a siren. I was in the kitchen again pouring coffee, same as always. The Georgia sun had just started breaking over the hibiscus hedges, casting warm light through the dining room windows. It should have been peaceful. Instead, I dropped the mug. Ceramic shattered across the floor. My pulse surged. I knew that scream. I knew it too well. I ran, barefoot, out the back door, heart hammering. And there she was. Zoe, my little girl, curled on the patio chair, her face pale, hands clawing at her chest. Her sketchpad lay forgotten at her feet. The oxygen line, her lifeline, was hissing useless air, sliced clean through the end, dangling like a garden hose left to dry. Dad, she gasped, voice trembling. I can't. I was already moving, sprinting to the porch wall, where we kept the backup tank. My hands shook as I twisted the valve and popped the line into the emergency port on her mask. The hiss changed. Steady now. Pressurized. Life. Her chest rose. Then again. Her color slowly returned. I dropped to my knees beside her, brushing her hair back, trying to smile. You're okay. I've got you. I've got you, baby. But inside, I was already turning cold. That line hadn't frayed. It hadn't cracked. It had been cut. Deliberately. I stood up and pulled out my phone, tapped into the feed from the new surveillance system I'd installed, military-grade motion, triggered 4K. I scrolled back. There. 6:03 a.m. A figure moving through the shadows near the side fence. Black trench coat. Gloves, a glint of silver in her right hand. She knelt, looked up, stared straight into the lens. Marlene Redfield. The Iron Rose herself. Then snip. Oxygen lines severed with garden shears. And she smiled. She smiled. My blood froze. This wasn't petty HOA bullying anymore. This was an attack, an ambush, an attempted murder of a child. My child. The part of me that had tried to be reasonable, that had followed the channels written. The emails requested the hearings, that part was gone. Burned away in a flash of panic and rage. This was war. And Marlene had made the first strike. But she'd made one mistake. She thought we were alone. I grabbed the phone again and hit speed dial. Vince answered on the second ring. Talk to me, he said. It happened, I growled. She cut the line. I've got it on camera. Zoe, okay? She's breathing. Barely. He was silent for a second, then checked the sky in 10, and he hung up. I didn't even ask. Because with Vince, when he says check the sky, you don't ask questions, you brace for impact. 10 minutes later, I heard it. A low rolling thunder across the horizon. Not weather, not jets. Helicopters. 3 of them. Blackhawks. Big. Loud. Unmistakable. They roared in from the west, slicing over Rosebriar Heights like angry hornets skimming low their rotors, whipping up wind in panic. Roof tiles rattled. Dogs barked. Windows shook. Neighbors spilled out of their homes in pajamas and bathrobes, clutching phones and coffee mugs. And right in the middle of it, Marlene burst onto her front lawn, hair in curler's robe, flying, her face twisted in horror. One of the Blackhawks banked hard, circled over my yard, then hovered in place like it was watching. A black SUV screeched to a halt in front of my house. Vince climbed out grinning. Behind him, a convoy of ex-Navy vets and defense contractors, all dressed casual but built like brick walls, stepped out one by one. Morning, Ellis, Vince called. Heard someone was threatening a military family. Figured we'd come say hello. I stepped forward, phone in hand. "You want to see something?" I said, loud enough for the crowd to hear. I tapped the screen, casting the footage to my porch projector, something I'd rigged the night before. And there it was, 30 feet wide. Marlene Redfield in full color, crouched in my yard, cutting my daughter's oxygen line. Gasps, whispers. Someone dropped their phone. "She could have died," I said, my voice like steel. "This woman trespassed and sabotaged medical equipment that keeps my daughter alive." I turned to Marlene, who stood frozen, mouth opening and closing like a beached fish. "Would you like to explain yourself?" "This is out of context," she shrieked. I didn't know she looked right at the camera. I snapped and smiled. Vince stepped beside me, arms crossed. One of his guys began handing out flyers, still shots from the footage. Marlene's smirk frozen in time. Another filmed everything. "We'll make sure this hits every HOA forum, news group, and veterans page in the country," Vince said calmly. "You messed with the wrong sailor's kid." Marlene backed away, face draining of color, her supporters gone. Most of them were now watching the video in silence. Mrs. Halston from 2 doors down whispered to her husband. She said it was about yard harmony. He didn't respond, just stared at the screen. Jaw clenched. One of the Blackhawks tilted again, blades slicing the air. The noise was deafening, but I didn't flinch. Neither did Zoe. She was sitting in a lawn chair, now emergency oxygen mask, still on sketchpad in her lap. She looked up at the helicopters like they were guardian angels. Later, I uploaded the footage to a military family forum, the kind of place where stories like this catch fire. Within an hour, the post had 40,000 views. By nightfall, 200,000 thousands. Comments exploded. People furious, outraged, unified. Hashtags started trending. Chantage, justice for Zoe. Trashin, HOA bully exposed. Trashin, Iron Rose cut down. News vans arrived before dinner. The HOA issued a statement claiming misunderstandings and pending investigation, but nobody bought it. You don't slice a child's lifeline and call it misunderstanding. You call it malice, and you get held accountable. That night, I tucked Zoe into bed. Her oxygen line replaced her breathing calm. "Dad," she whispered, eyes heavy, "were those helicopters really for me?" I smiled. "Yeah, kiddo. And if anyone tries to hurt you again, there'll be more." Outside, the Blackhawks had returned to base. But the roar they left behind, it was still echoing in every lawn, every porch, every heart in Rosebriar Heights. The Iron Rose had declared war, but I hadn't fought alone, and I wasn't done yet. By the time the sun dipped behind the rows of colonial rooftops, Rosebriar Heights was no longer the same place it had been that morning. The chopper blades had stopped spinning, the vets had packed up their gear, and the whispers across the neighborhood had swelled into full-blown conversations, porch to porch, lawn to lawn, all centering on the same thing: the woman in the black coat with garden shears and the little girl she almost killed. Marlene Redfield had retreated into her house like a wounded queen, locking herself in a crumbling castle. And me, I sat on the porch next to Zoe, who was still sketching her oxygen line, now connected, safe, steady. She looked up at me and said, "Are they going to take her away?" "Dad," I blinked. "Who, Miss Redfield?" she said, looking not angry, just tired. "She doesn't like me." My heart cracked right there on the porch swing. "No, baby," I told her, brushing her hair behind her ear. "She's not going anywhere near you again. That's a promise." I kept it. That night I called Vince again, told him I wanted to pursue it officially. Not just HOA drama or public shaming. I wanted the law involved. You sure, he asked. You've already won the crowd. I don't want revenge, I said. I want protection. For Zoe. For anyone who's ever been scared into silence by someone like her. I'll make a call, he said. The next morning, attorney Alyssa Grant, former JAG officer now working pro bono for military families, showed up at my door. I've read the file, she said, holding a tablet loaded with every piece of footage, every HOA email, every fine, and every public post Marlene ever made. This isn't just a nuisance claim. It's endangerment, vandalism, and emotional trauma. We're going in strong. She filed by noon. Within 48 hours, the city court issued a notice for Marlene to appear on charges of property destruction and endangering a minor. Local news picked up the story, framing it as the oxygen line war in Savannah. Zoe's drawing, the one she finished that day, a hibiscus flower wearing an oxygen mask, was posted by a veterans advocacy page and went viral. By the end of the week, even a sitting senator from Georgia retweeted it, adding, "No community should criminalize medical needs." Period. Meanwhile, Marlene didn't leave her house. She missed HOA meetings. She ignored door knocks. But she couldn't ignore the legal summons. On a gray Monday morning, she showed up to court looking 10 years older, wrapped in a shawl, and escorted by a lawyer who looked like he was already preparing for a loss. Alyssa didn't grandstand. She didn't need to. She presented the footage, the documentation, the full story. The judge, a stern woman with no time for dramatics, leaned back and said one thing after watching the security tape. You're lucky this child survived. And you're lucky this father had the presence of mind to document it. Marlene was fined $12,000 for damages and ordered to pay all of Zoe's medical bills from that weekend. She tried to protest, offering a weak apology, but the judge cut her off. You don't get to cut a child's lifeline and call it a misunderstanding. That's not how the world works. The sentence included 100 hours of community service and a restraining order that barred her from coming within 200 feet of our home. But that wasn't the end of it. Something else had started shifting in the neighborhood itself. A week after the verdict, Rosebriar Heights held an emergency HOA election. Marlene didn't show up. Mrs. Halston, who'd once co-signed one of the fines against me, stood up and nominated Mrs. Pierce, a quiet widow who had apologized to me after the incident, as interim HOA president. She was elected unanimously. The first motion, a rewrite of the HOA charter. The first clause, Zoe's Garden Clause, a protection for all residents who require visible medical accommodations, stating that health, safety, and dignity shall override aesthetic guidelines. When I read that line, I sat in my truck and cried. Not big dramatic sobs, just quiet relief. For once, the world had bent in the right direction. People started showing up at our door. A couple brought homemade peach cobbler. Another, a single dad from 2 blocks over, gave Zoe a plush turtle he said his daughter had outgrown. But the most surprising visit came from Bob, one of Marlene's staunchest supporters. He handed Zoe a fresh pack of colored pencils and said, I should have seen it sooner. I let fear do the talking. I'm sorry. Zoe looked up at him, eyes wide, and said, It's okay. Flowers grow back. Word spread. Zoe's artwork ended up featured in an art therapy fundraiser for disabled kids. Her drawing of the hibiscus in a breathing mask, it was printed on T-shirts, mugs, and posters. The proceeds went to children's hospitals in Georgia. The senator who had tweeted about her sent her a letter handwritten, calling her a young warrior with the heart of a lion. As for Marlene, she sold her house within 3 weeks and left Savannah quietly. No farewell party, no goodbye note, just a moving truck at dawn and a for sale sign replaced with a sold sticker before most neighbors finished their coffee. Zoe never asked where she went. She didn't have to, because now when she sat outside under the sun, her oxygen line coiled safely across the patio and nestled between hand-planted hibiscus bushes that our neighbors added just for her. She didn't look afraid. She looked peaceful, whole, happy. And me, I watched from the steps, arms crossed, coffee in hand, thinking, not about the war we had to fight, but the garden we built afterward. That's the thing people forget about men like me. We don't look for trouble, but we're trained to finish what others start. And when it's about your kid, your baby girl, who just wants to breathe and draw and live, you don't stop at fair. You go for right. So here we are, Rosebriar Heights, hibiscus blooming, Zoe laughing, and one less iron rose in the garden. I'm Damon Ellis, Navy vet, single dad, and now proud resident of a community that finally found its soul. If you hear a low rumble overhead someday, don't worry. It's just Vince doing another flyover. And if anyone ever messes with my daughter again, well, let's just say we still know a few pilots. Sometimes the greatest battles aren't fought on foreign soil or in corporate boardrooms, they're fought right in our backyards. Damon Ellis didn't seek conflict. He simply wanted peace, healing, and a fresh start for his daughter Zoe. But when faced with cruelty masked as community standards, he stood firm not with violence but with truth documentation and the strength of a united community. The lesson here is clear: silence is not the answer when injustice threatens the vulnerable. Whether it's a child's right to breathe or a family's right to feel safe in their own home, we must be willing to speak out. Damon could have backed down. He could have let the HOA fines pile up and told Zoe to stay indoors. But instead, he chose to defend her dignity with the law, with allies, and with grace. And for those who find themselves in similar positions, targeted, isolated, or made to feel like their existence is an inconvenience, let this story remind you you are not alone. There are people who will stand with you. But sometimes you have to take that first courageous step: document what's happening, ask for help, and refuse to shrink yourself to make others comfortable. Zoe's story also teaches us that community can heal even after it's been complicit in harm. When neighbors saw the truth, when they witnessed the cost of their silence, they stepped up. They rewrote rules. They showed compassion. They rebuilt trust. And that's a powerful reminder that people can change if we give them a reason to. To those watching or listening today, if you see something wrong, say something. And if you're the one being wronged, don't let it break you. Find your strength, find your people, and never be afraid to defend what's right, especially when it comes to protecting the ones you love. On behalf of our team at Us, Justice Stories, thank you for joining us for this incredible journey of resilience, justice, and redemption. We don't take your time for granted, and we're honored that you chose to listen. If this story touched you, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel so more people can hear stories that matter. And if you've ever faced your own iron rose, a neighbor, a boss, a system that tried to silence you, drop us a comment. Your voice deserves to be heard. Until next time, stay strong, stand tall, and never let anyone tell you that dignity is negotiable. We'll see you in the next story.